Hello, welcome to week 14 of the Communicate Responsibly podcast. You got me and McLovin in the studio today. You may hear her jingling around. Hopefully, she will not see any squirrels. Outside of our studio window, there is a bird feeder with some suet. I should call it a squirrel feeder, not a bird feeder. But she's in here to hopefully keep the distractions down from out there. Let's hope that lasts. This week, we're talking about feedback, giving feedback at work in your professional work setting. Although some of this could apply to giving feedback in your personal life, it's kind of two different flavors, at least in my mind and in the research I've done about how we should communicate. Oh, here's McLovin now. How we should communicate at work. So, if you didn't look at week 13 at last week, you're going to want to do that because, right, McLovin, we talked about four different types of communication patterns. And yes, they are stereotypes, and yes, they are kind of putting people in boxes, but I think it gives you a real good idea of the type of person that you are trying to communicate with. And those four that we talked about were the direct communicator, and I said that's kind of me at work. And we've talked about when I say NO to you directly, that's not really what you want to hear sometimes. But some people want to communicate very directly. There are others that are analytical. They want the numbers, they want to do the research, they want to know the why that you're doing the project, that you're in the direction you're in. That's really their focus. There are folks who are amiable and like to give you licks, like McLovin. Their main thing is cohesiveness within the team or within the relationship. And then there are those people who are expressive. And in my mind, these are the people who have the big vision. They have great ideas. And sometimes there's frustration with all four of these learning techniques, but expressive people sometimes have big ideas. The macro, making it micro, can be the difficulty. So, how do we give feedback with all four of these personality types? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to bring in, we've been talking about motivational interviewing this whole time, how you can use this um, knowledge about who you're dealing with and bring in some motivational interviewing techniques. Because remember, the practice of motivational interviewing, are you ready to go down now? Okay. The practice of motivational interviewing is different than having a motivational interviewing spirit in all conversations. So when we're talking about giving feedback to people, it's really going to be the spirit of motivational interviewing that we're talking about. Let's start by talking about you and how you would want to receive communication. So hopefully, when somebody talks to you and tells you something, they have an idea about who you are. I know I have said to people in my personal life, Um, it's not what you said to me, it's how you said it because we know each other. We got it like that. So even if we're talking about a work environment, knowing those four basic styles of communication and who your work person is, where they fall, I would think of that first, right? What's their personality? What have you found to be their communication style? And this one's big. What emotional state are they in, right? And you can think about all these things again as they're giving you feedback because what we want to try not to do is personalize information at work. And that's a main difference between your personal life and work life. It can be difficult and harmful to take things personally from people you're close to, friends, relatives, people you love. But it's so important at work not to take things personally because at the end of the day, hopefully the main focus of your communication at work is about the job and getting the work done. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. But if you are going to get feedback from somebody, here's a good way to start. They come in and they ask you, hopefully, permission about if they can give you feedback. Or maybe they just bring the issue up. I want to talk about this project. I want to talk about how today went. I want to talk about that meeting we just got out of. So when they bring it up, I would suggest to you that you start off by sharing your part. How did you feel that the meeting went? And always start off with a strength of yours. Well, I felt that I made some good points. It was important for me to be heard in that meeting. When I told the boss X, Y, and Z about that there's a disconnect between what we're doing on the front line and what's happening behind closed doors, we're getting suggestions about things from people who don't really have experience in that. I was really glad that I brought that up. Any kind of strength that you can say, I'm glad I spoke up at all. Maybe that's your strength. Before you get into criticizing yourself, if you're like me, I know a lot of us can come up with the things we wish we'd done differently rather than coming up with the things we're glad we did. I think Mickey's had it with being in here. So let me pause for just a minute and we'll get back to her. Okay. Mickey's out. No more jangling. If you notice, it's gone in the background. I have an open door policy with her, so she may be back in our professional dog owner relationship. Um, so yeah, you want to kind of, I don't want to say take control of it, but own your part. And this is responsible communication. It's effective communication. Talking about what you think thought went well and what you think you could have done differently. Now, this can be the tricky part. You're probably going to hear what the other person thinks, whether you like it or not. So ideally, you want to invite the feedback from the other person. So what did you think about the meeting? Did you have some thoughts on what I said? When you open that door, be ready to sit back and listen to what the other person has to say. And in your mind, remember our emotional state is really important. Be saying to yourself, this is a direct communicator. This is an analytical communicator. This is an amiable communicator. They'll probably just tell me it was all good. Or this is an expressive communicator who's going to come up with big ideas. Those things are not about you. Those are about the other person. But saying to a person, do you mind giving me some feedback or do you have some feedback for me because I'm open to that is a really good idea. If you are not, and the person is coming in and starting off and telling you things and you feel you have a reaction, I would ask permission from them, maybe stop them and say, can we set a time to talk about this at a different time? Because right now I'm I've got some things going on. I'm not really feeling that I'm going to process this correctly. Whatever you need to say to let them know that it's important, but also build the boundary that now is not a good time for you. Remember, At the core of this is you owning responsibly and effectively what type of communicator you are the most: direct, analytical, amiable, or expressive. And maybe even in your sharing, after listening to these podcasts and digging into this a little bit, letting the people you work with know that that is your type of communication, because that's going to help them to know how to give you feedback as well. So, wanted to start off by kind of having you be the person that's receiving feedback. Now let's flip the script. What if you are the person who needs to give feedback? Well, we'll go through each of those personality types, and then I'll give you some very basic motivational interviewing tools that might work very well in giving feedback. So these are pretty clear. The direct communicator, they're going to want direct feedback, clear with actionable next steps. The motivational interviewing thing that you want to do is ask permission before you start. And I would even say, just like we modeled for ourselves, I would ask them before I get into what I'm going to tell them as feedback. Do you mind telling me how you thought this went? Do you mind telling me what you think you did right? Do you want to talk about the meeting and what just happened? Or is now a good time to talk about it? Those are all close-ended questions. So if the person says no, you need to give them the autonomy and the power to say no with a follow-up question of when would be a good time to talk about this. One of the biggest things that doesn't happen in relationships, and especially at work, is feedback. And performance, the quality of our job, working together as a team, is never going to get better if we don't go into this uncomfortable place of giving each other feedback. That's why it's key. So often it doesn't happen on the job. So you ask, what do you think you did? How do you think it went? Expect that they might start off with criticism. Oh, I blew it. I can't believe I did that. Did you hear when I stuttered in that presentation? I put that slide up and it was incorrect. It wasn't formatted. Listen with the spirit of motivational interviewing. You're listening. You're going to reflect back what they said. And also, if they don't put out a strength, ask them, what do you think you did right? So the main tools that you're going to use throughout your giving feedback process are the ORs I've talked about before. Motivational interviewing didn't make ORs up, but they work really well in effective, responsible communication. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries, and not necessarily in that order, especially when you're giving feedback. So, as I said before, start off by asking permission. And that's not even one of the yours, but it's really important. It's always better to ask somebody if it's okay, with the understanding if they say no, that that's got to be okay with you. Then ask them the open-ended question of, can you tell me what you thought about the meeting? How did you think that went? And when they tell you, reflect. Reflections are so powerful. I've mentioned them in a lot of these podcasts. Reflect back what they said. If they do not give you a strength that they did, ask them what they think went right. If they still can't say anything they did right, we go to the affirmation of ORs. Give them some affirmation of what you thought went well, what you thought they did well. Make sure it's sincere and authentic, but you can always find something that a person did right. So direct communicators, you're going to spell that right out for them, right? And you're going to be using open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries for all of these different types of styles. But how you mix them in is going to be different depending on the person's communication style. With anyone that you're dealing with, after when you feel you're getting near the end of the feedback process, the talk with them, try to summarize everything they've said. And a summary is just a series of reflections. It's like a bouquet of flowers. It's a bouquet of reflections that you give to them. Here's what I heard you say today. Is that correct? Did I leave anything out? Is there anything else you'd like to add? Really good way to pull together feedback. So direct communicators, put it right out there. When it comes to analytical communicators, when you ask how you think it went and you're listening to them, so much of this is listening, try to reflect back the information that they think was missing or they think that you might need for the next time. So with analytical communicators, it might be next steps of what they think needs to happen next. Reflect that back to them. And you're probably going to want to, one of you, write that down, what's going to happen next, right? But you're still using that standard ORS um, kind of tool bag in your communication with folks. With analytical people, it may be more, here's the information we're going to need to collect because they didn't feel it was there. Remember to ask them what they think they did right. And if they don't have something, you're going to affirm something or offer something that they did. Amiable communicators, again, may not be able to talk about something they did right, but their focus is on cohesiveness. So you expect the least amount of maybe, oh, the boss really stinks, or they never listen, or some kind of, I hate to say negative, but maybe critical or skeptical thinking of the bosses. So with an amiable person, same things, reflect back what they said, affirm if they do not give you something they think they did right, but some open-ended questions about what they think is missing or how you can ask, how can you help if you're ready to answer in a way that says, I'll do what they're asking me to do. But open-ended questions with amiable people about what you think could be better in the future or where did we maybe miss the mark because they may not give you that up front. People pleasers. And I use that term for myself because I know that's me in a lot of ways. And then the last type of communication strategy, the expressive person is going to have the big ideas, and it may go, well, they're missing the big ideas. They don't see the big pictures. They have all this stuff analytical that they say gets in the way, and it's just blocking, blocking, blocking. Or the expressive person may say, I got some real big ideas about this. So for that type of person, your open-ended question is going to be about how do we get there from here? And maybe slowing them down. Again, I like to have my pencil and my pad of paper right there about you're really coming up with some good ideas, affirmation. I really like the energy you bring into these projects and the vision you have for where we're going. Can you help me to understand some practical steps that we might take to get there? Because within our organization, we have some analytical people, and the expressive person may be telling you they just don't want to do it, they're resistant to it. But how realistic is it? And you may not be that blunt with an expressive person, but you're working with them to say, can you paint a picture for me? Can we go together and show me how we might get to this grand plan that you have? So that's a real quick kind of way to give feedback to all different people. A key word we haven't used yet in motivational interviewing is eliciting information. And newer versions of motivational interviewing call it evoking information. So when you're talking with someone in general, from a motivational interviewing point of view, you're trying to draw out information from them that you're not putting it there. You're not like adding the ingredient in there. You're just bringing out the information that might help you because the place you fit together, so the you is the collective partnership team you're drawing out of them how we can get to this goal with the ideas you have and some ideas I may have. So when you elicit or evoke ideas from people, you get it all out on the table. And if there is something you want to add, this isn't just all on them. Again, ask permission. Would it be okay if I offered some thoughts? Are you open to me coming up with some research I found or something that another team member said to me? And if they say no, that's a close-ended question, then again, okay, you're going to just listen where they're coming from. The main thing that happens with feedback and overall communication, and I'm seeing this more and more and more as I'm doing this podcast and going deeper into motivational interviewing, is unsolicited advice. We start off by telling the person, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some feedback on how that went and what you did wrong, and I'm not going to have any strengths. We do not partner with the person and try to understand, elicit, evoke what they saw as their strengths and the places they feel like they need to tighten up in their communication and their work on the project and whatever it is. And when we can come to that place where we get curious and we listen from that place of curiosity, and then we offer in a partnership kind of dynamic what we think, then we're really on the same team and getting something done. But going there too early with what you think ought to happen, or let me tell you my perspective on this, that can put up walls very quickly. So that's the nuts and bolts of feedback. I just want to make sure I hit everything that we were talking about and that I wanted to say today. Doesn't look like Mickey has any closing remarks. Um, so that's really, yeah, I think that's it. Feedback in general is not meant to correct people. It's not meant to correct people. Feedback is meant to connect with people in a way that uh, seems safe and in a way that lets them know, I want to say it lets them know you get them, but even if you don't get them, you're willing to understand, right? What type of communicator are you? Where are the places that you see we need to grow as a company? How are you understanding this process? And all of those things, folks, are asking you to understand and listen more than you just going in there and telling people what you think. And again, I think that happens way too often in the workplace, and it can shut down effective, responsible communication. So over the next week at work, here's what I would invite you to do if you are open to doing it. Keep finding out your communication style or styles. Hear it when you're saying it at work. Try to suss out what the other styles are in the place you work at. Be aware of those styles, right? When you communicate with different people and different styles, try to be very clear in your communication and get those oars in the water. Ask some open-ended questions, give some affirmations, reflect. I would put reflect at the top of the thing. Just reflect back so they know you're listening and you're making an effort here. And when you get near the end of the conversation or when the conversation's gone on for a while, summarize. So what I'm hearing, so what you've said, let me make sure I understand this. And after the summary, ask, did I get that right? Did I leave anything out? Is there anything you'd like to add? All great ways of effectively and responsibly adding communication and feedback that hopefully will work really well in your workplace. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be here again next week. I hope you are too. Take care.